Hi, this is Catherine, video number 10, the first chemo experience. Just before my first chemo infusion, I went for a chemo lesson with my oncologist. I got this sheet with all these possible side effects and possible solutions. Even though it was a little overwhelming, it was very informative and I find it very helpful. And I also got a tour of the chemo room, which is on the penthouse, top floor of the building. And when you go to the rooms, it had a feel of Logan's Run. For those of you who are old enough to have seen that, though I'm sure you can find that because it's a classic, Michael York. Sort of futuristic sci-fi, less personal than I had imagined. On TV they show you that everybody's in circles. They're not in circles. They're just separate entities, but the good part is the chair looks comfortable. They have chairs for people that you want to bring with you. On the sheet that I got with my chemo lesson, it also gives you all the drugs or possible drugs that you would need. You get steroids before and after. Starting from the day of the chemo, you take this acid reflux drug. Those are the mandatory meds. And then there's the other list of like for nausea, because chemo gives you nausea very often. Of course, my oncologist guaranteed me it was not going to be Zofran, and she gave me two different kinds. One is more sedating than the other one. We got the prescription, we filled it ahead of time, we were prepared. Then I spoke to several of my friends who are cancer survivors. We compared notes. I felt a little more secure. My body has always been very dramatic in reaction to med. That helped put my anxiety to ease. I was warned that steroids might give me insomnia, which it did, because I'm supposed to take the steroids starting from the day before the chemo infusion, which I did. It did give me insomnia, which I felt anxious about because I thought I'd get, a lot of rest and sleep so that I'd be ready for it. And instead I had insomnia, so I couldn't sleep. It was very different for me. I can always sleep, so it was the drug effect. Monday, March 16th, 2015, 11 a.m. was my very first chemo infusion. My husband drove me. By the way, that heart pillow I showed you last time needs some kind of clip to clip the belt together, because sometimes if you don't pay a lot of attention to holding the belts, the seat belts in the car, it flies away because you gotta unclip, redo the whole thing. Note to self, design something like that. We got inside the room. My husband was with me the whole time. The chairs, almost like a pull out sort of lounge, a single, it reclines and everything. The chair was quite comfortable. The nurses were super nice, obviously knew what they were doing. Everything was painless. They had these heated electric pads. It warms up my arm. I asked them if they're gonna put a port in me, and they said that let's see what happens, because if we can do it without it, we're not going to. The port, which is like, I guess, a hole in your chest or something like that, where they can click into a more direct access maybe to the blood system. I didn't have to have a port, so I don't know yet. So things might change later, but for now I am portless. They used the IV. I'm thankful for that. They started by taking my blood for the labs, because they need to make sure that they test for my white blood cells. The key measurement is the absolute neutrophil count. 1.5 is normal. If you're beyond that 1.5, then you're okay to go for the chemo infusion. That went okay, so we started the chemo, and then I found out from nearby other chemo patients who are ordered takeout. And I saw this guy came in delivering a takeout, and it looked really good. I asked my husband, I said, can you ask that where can we get that food? And the nurses came out right over with all kinds of menus, and so we ordered as well. We learned the first day when you're doing the infusion of every chemo is actually a good day to eat there. So thus they have so many menus from surrounding areas, so I was excited about that I can actually eat and get infused at the same time. And they also gave me some Benadryl so I can go to sleep, but I was so excited about the food. I waited for the food. That's the Chinese blood. Basically the first day was fairly easy. I was just a little bit tired because of the insomnia from the night before. Other than that, I felt fine. When I went home, I was so happy, and I thought I was this special person that got to not have these side effects of chemo. Even just before the chemo, my husband and my son both got a really bad cold, which I had nursed myself the whole time, trying to not to get sick with, you know, my normal coldies, for those of you who know me, and a bunch of other homeopathic remedies, and I did not get their bad cold. Lots of Purell constantly, and I made them do it. Giant bottle sitting in our kitchen counter. Everybody that came in had to use it and stuff, and I kept myself very healthy through the chemo, through the first day, even though Anthony had refused Neulasta, which were supposed to boost my white blood cell count right after, because the chemo messes with your immunity. I was a little anxious, but through all of that, it was fine, so I again thought I was spared. And also the bone pain, so I thought it was a lucky thing. Hold that thought. The week before the chemo, I felt really good, and I found physical therapy sheet for post-op exercise, and I started doing that, so I gained more mobility in this arm. Now I can actually raise up here, and my reconstructive surgeon cut me loose, he said, until the chemo's over, so that we can adjust everything to, I tell he's a perfectionist, thank you. This belt had to go around my incision, and it had to be super duper tight. That is now off. I am so happy. I could have everything. I can have coffee, caffeine, ibuprofen, Motrin, my pain drug of choice. I was trying to start on some of those chocolates and stuff. It is so weird. I have no desire for sugar right now. Sometimes I actually eat a little bit to see, but it's not as good as I remember. But I'm hoping I'll get it back after the chemo, I hope. I increased my exercising time, speed. A friend of mine even took me on the beach, and we walked for probably about an hour. That felt really good. I love walking on the beach, so if anyone is going to walk on the beach, I still can't quite drive yet. My reconstruction surgeon said, be honest with yourself. If you feel like you can stop an accident and you have to move and twist and turn to make that happen, then you can drive. Otherwise, maybe you can drive really, really slow to the nearby market, which is 2 minutes down the street. The first day of chemo infusion was day 1. Day 2 was also great. I even got to go to open house. I surprised myself and apparently some of my friends. It's the first time that we actually didn't make it to all the class. We made it all but one. And we kind of caught the teacher on the way out. Amazingly, my son is doing really well, even without my help. So I'm very proud of him. He doesn't realize it, but that is helping me so much, because that was the one thing I really worried about. But he seemed to be going very strong by himself. Very happy. Day 3 is sort of the beginning of the downhill slide. It started with a tiny bit of nausea because of my past experience with Zolfran. By the way, pregnant women should not have that. I just saw a commercial on TV about it. The culprit for causing some birth defects. So if you took nausea pill for morning sickness while you're pregnant, apparently you're supposed to contact these people. Look for the late night commercial. So I resisted the nausea pills on day 3 by walking more, not rigorous but moderate, and that really helped me. Then I also ate through that tiny nausea, which also helped, believe it or not. It's very strange. On day 4, my scalp started to hurt, which is bizarre. I've never had my scalp hurt. Then I felt myself getting way more emotional. I've had a high percentage of emotional accessibility, but this is ridiculous. I don't want to do it. Once I start, it's hard to stop. I can just say one word and then instantly tears come, and I don't even know what I'm crying about, and I just cry about every single fracking thing. Here's a use for chemo for actors. If you don't have an emotional accessibility, do some chemo. Just call action and I'll cry. My short-term memory is gone. I'm like Dory. I think that's her name. Dory, the no short-term memory fish in Finding Nemo. If you call me or email me or you tell me to do stuff, call you, I cannot promise to make that happen. And Lumosity proves that too. My memory score is like half of what it was. I normally have a little bit of brain farts here and there, but this is like way magnified amount of brain farts. I am now a human pest control. There's like a summertime now, so there's a lot of, they always bite me. Been the bit-y all my life, wherever I go. That's why I don't like camping, because I'm the one they bite. I find that if a bug bites me, I find dead bugs full around me. Anybody need to get rid of bugs? I can get rid of that just by being there. One more use for chemo. As day 3 is when it started, I had diarrhea for about a week. The most diarrhea I've ever had. It's like 5 times a day kind of liquid thing. It's kind of gross, but yeah. And every day, more side effects happen, sometimes 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and you don't get rid of the other side effects, they stay with you. And now you have like so many after a few days. It's a lot. I'm someone who was very lucky, apparently, and my body worked very well. On day 6, the exercise and the eating stopped working for the nausea, so I remember what my oncologist told me to try the new nausea pill. So I started with the nausea pill A as the one that is less strong. That simply controls the nausea. The nausea B is sort of like Valium. Had not had to take that. Compazine, I want to say, is the nausea A. That actually did work, and it didn't send me puking. Thank you, my oncologist. She is really good. I have really great doctors. I cannot complain. Once the chemo brain kicked in, it was driving me a little nutty, so I started to make this chart to keep track of my chemo meds. It basically tells me what drug, what day I'm supposed to take. These are my chemo infusion days. It's helping me. I'm working on this new chart, which is going to help me manage my medical payments. I have so many doctor appointments, so many lab tests. To make things even more complicated, Anthem is sending me up to 4, 5 EOB, explanation of benefits, where they tell you, you know, this is what they charge, this is the discount, this is what we pay, this is what you owe, this is your copay, this is your co-insurance. Copay is like when you walk in, you just pay that, regardless of what anything else is. Co-insurance is, I have 20% co-insurance because in order to have 0 co-insurance where they pay the rest, you pay, you know, just let's say the copay or whatever, that is like thousands of dollars for just myself. We don't have that kind of fun. This is the best we can do, and it is pretty good. Thank you to Obamacare. They cannot deny you insurance. Thank you, Obama. And some of those EOBs that are repetitive, they're not consistent. I'll get like the first 2 will tell me what I owe, and then I'll get other ones that says this is not covered. Then when that happens, I'll get a bill from the medical billing office saying that I owe $800 for this or $1,000 for that, and I know that's not right. I don't know if it's another ploy to confuse me, but I'm working on a worksheet to clarify everything. Sun sensitivity. My skin has always burned easily, so I'm not a huge fan of laying out there for the sun anyway. I was sitting inside an office with an open window, maybe just for, I don't know, 10 minutes. Diffracted sunlight, and I'm sunburned. Now I'm getting to the point where my eyes are so sensitive to the sun, so I spend a good portion of my time in a dark room, sort of like a vampire. Yeah. The inside of my mouth feels like someone sandpapered my tongue and inside of mouth. Very, very super sensitive. And I wonder if that's why my taste buds are not working. I can still smell, but I can't taste. So there's something that is not fitting, and it's a bizarre sensation. Though I can taste ice cream is one that I can taste. I had gone back for a follow-up from the chemo on the 8th day, found out that I was running a fever. With all these other side effects, I think I was just so distracted I didn't know what was going on. I just know I didn't feel good. The doctor said, oh, you need to come back if your fever goes to 100.5. Not 105, 100.5. And I remember thinking, 100.5, it's not very high. Around the 10th day, I think I hit bottom. My fever went up to 101.8. I kept fighting it, and I even got this new immunity booster called AHCC, shiitake extract put in a pill that's supposed to boost your immunity incredibly. It did not work for me. The body ache and everything that goes with the fever becomes, you know, more unbearable. And finally, I called my doctor and I said, can I take a Motrin? She goes, no, you need to go to ER, 101.8. That's something I beat all the time. And she goes, look, if your immunity is 0, if you have a tiny infection, you can't fight it off. Very dangerous. Off I go to the ER. Like I was at 4, waited forever, and I don't think I was seen until 7. They finally admitted me into the hospital through the ER by 10. I remember Nurse Erica was really, really nice in the ER room. She was very attentive and clued in. Someone ordered me me meatloaf. That was horrifying. Oh, they called me neutropenic, neutropenic. What that means is they tested my blood, and so I basically have 0 count. 0 immunity. I'm a numbers girl. I need those numbers. I understand why 100.5 is bad when you're neutropenic. They put me in a room where it is isolated, and the people who come into my room wear the mask, surgical hat, surgical gown, which I worn for surgery in Grey's Anatomy, so I know, because I also got a 30-minute surgery lesson from a surgical nurse for that scene. I remembered all of those things, so I get it. My bad for not going in earlier. The hospital that I was at this time is different from the other hospitals. Even though they're under the same name, they're not the same. The only reason they put me in there is because they have an oncology floor, because they're very familiar with the neutropenic situation. A lot of times I had to press the on-call button 3, 4, 5 times before I get help. There were 4 nurses who were amazing. The rest were, they were okay. They were not the same nurses that were at the other hospital. 2 policies that they were like Nazi about. The first one is I have to tell them exactly what is in my bag, and they started to ask me, do you have any cash, a credit card, and what kind is it? Then I already had chemo, so I brought my meds that I need, and they confiscated that, and they say, oh, that has to go into our pharmacy. I'm like, I paid for that. That's money. Hospital policy. It's really annoying. The excuse was, well, we don't want patients to over-medicate themselves. What? You can't treat us like we're idiots. We're already not feeling our best. I ended up spending 5 days in the hospital. Incredible amount of things happened. So exhausting. Gazillion tests that they gave me. There's a respiratory test through the nose, blood test, urine test, stool test, which I had to do twice because somebody forgot to tell me I needed a little basket to collect the poop. Gave me an x-ray, which I don't have pneumonia. What seems to be insane amount of blood tests. Not just my white blood cell count. They tested bacteria and viruses. Oh, and they gave me 8, 9, 10. I lost count of antibiotic IV bags. Normally, I'm not even a great tolerator of antibiotics. They were also very frequent vital sign checks. That's the blood pressure, body pulse, oxygen level, and temperature check. My blood pressure runs low, 90/60 is the norm. The attending doctors are great, but they're only there in the morning for a very short time, and they come in and they talk to you really quickly. The nighttime doctors are on call. You never see them. They only talk through the nurses. They were really obsessive about my blood pressure being too low. I think it was like 88, 81 for the systolic, diastole, and it's 56 to 50. For me, that is not really low when I'm laying in a bed not moving. I even showed one of the nurses who took the blood pressure. I said, if you let me go to the bathroom and back, it'll be back up to 90/60. And that's what happened. The nurse tells the doctor still goes, well, but still. No, I know my body. But they kept putting more saline, with all the other stuff in it. I still am very bloated. It hardened my lower abdomen scar. I have enough side effects. I do not need another one, but they did not listen. So at some point I just refused. They wanted to do more antibiotic bags, and I said no. I think as a patient, we have to be reminded that we have rights to refuse service, because ultimately it is our body. Not every person's body is identical, so you need to listen to your body. And the nighttime doctors that are on call, I had guessed that they were residents because they were so scared that my blood pressure was so low. And then I found out that I was right, they were residents. Chill out. You need to talk to your patient. That's how you could learn. Remember, I didn't get the Anthem approval for the Neulasta shot that was supposed to boost my white blood cells for 2 weeks after the chemo so that it can keep my white blood cells up. There's another drug that has to be injected daily, and that's called Neupogen. I think the first 2 days they were 0. After the 3rd shot, it went up to 1.1. That's the absolute neutrophil count. And 1.5 is the norm. On the 4th day, it went up to 21. Normally that would be a concern, but they're not concerned because they knew it's the stimulated count. I think that that's what hospitals are good for when you have a big problem like neutropenic, where it's due to the chemo. I needed help. They helped me get that neutrophil back up, and then I needed to go home. Do the full recovery at home. The hospital food, I'm sorry, was really, really awful. So I sort of negotiated my release release, and I got released on Saturday. At the end of the day, when all the tests came back, I had nothing. I had no bacterial, no viral infections that were detectable, no pneumonia, no intestinal infections, no respiratory infections. Educated guess was that I simply had a neutropenic fever. This sort of a preemptive protection. That's the only thing my body had left, was to raise the temperature. Chemo had taken away everything else. From my mastectomy on this side, I can't have blood drawn or IV put in through this arm for, I guess, I don't know, 10 years. They want to leave this side alone for it to heal. So everything has to be done on this side from now on. I had an IV here for all that was injected into me. Then over here was all pretty bruised up. The whole place here was stuck so many times, it hurt so much. I would cry when the nurse came in for more tests. Poor nurse. I hope I recover so that I don't need a port. But you know what? It's really not the end of the world. I don't know why I get so crazy about these little tiny details. On the end of the 3rd day, the beginning of the 4th day, this really nice nurse came in and helped me out with my hygiene maintenance. I brushed my hair just lightly and a whole clump of my hair came out, and that was the beginning. Sometimes you want to put your hair back and you run your fingers through your hair just ever so lightly just to put it back, and then that much hair came out. I just started to sob, and that nurse was very, very kind, and she stayed there with me, and she said this is normal for all women under chemo who loses their hair. It's a very huge deal. But since then, I've been looking at the internet for different ideas for a scarf on head. There's this really young girl that does it with the t-shirt, and I just love her spirit. So maybe the scarf is the way to go. One of my very good friends loaned me her wig, which I'm looking forward to trying. I must have a lot of hair because I thought I was gonna lose my hair within the first 2 days with the amount of hair that was coming out, trailing behind me. Really daunting to have that much hair fall. And then you start to feel it down your arms as you move about, and it feels like ants crawling on you. And every morning I lay in a bed of hair, and I spent a lot of time collecting my hair. My son said to me, "Are you gonna shave your head?" I said, "Not yet." And he said, "If your hair starts to look like golems, then you probably should shave it then." So after the first 24 hours at home, my exhaustion was completely gone because I got to sleep without interruption. People didn't come in and say, "We need your vitals, we need your blood, we need to give you this." And I'm trying to get my chi back. I felt like it went backwards a little bit. I actually tried walking on the 3rd day home, but I came home not even halfway down the block. I couldn't catch my breath, and I can feel my legs doing weird things, and I wasn't sure if the drugs were out of my systems. I don't want to keel over on the street, so I came back. But I think I'm strong enough to try walking again. And while I was resting at home, I saw Jay Moore's happy routine. And it was really funny because he started to make fun of the drug companies with their commercials. How they say at the very end, the antidepressant drugs cause this and this and this, and depression and suicide. I mean, his timing and wording is much better than mine. I'm not a stand-up, I wish I were. He said, shouldn't an antidepressant not have a side effect as depression? Isn't that what you're trying to get away from? He said that's like having an inhaler whose side effect gives you asthma. Or an antipsychotic drug that makes you psychotic. And also the suicide thing is really weird too if you're already depressive. Oh, and then he said very often at the very end of the drug commercial, it'll have where they say a really super quick and like a really soft voice. In very rare cases, death. I'm glad he made fun of that because very often I'm the person watching this going, what? That's not right. Jay Moore said, I'm sorry, but death is not a side effect because you're freaking dead. Not a side effect. I have to agree with that. Okay, I'm gonna end on that light note.